My name is Megan Baumgartner. I'm the Director of Community and Economic Development for the City of Fishers. And today we wanted to invite our business community to be able to join us regarding a new ordinance and policy that we're putting into place and proposing to put into place with our City Council. And that is our Public Safety Nuisance Ordinance. We are gathered here with a team today of city officials who have been involved in this process to be able to go through what you might expect with that, but then also really happy to be joined as well by Jack Russell with the One Zone Chamber of Commerce. So before we get started, Jack, really appreciate you being here and anything that you'd like to share before we get started.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Megan. I just want to say thank you to Mayor Fadness and the team, and also our public safety officials for looking at this. I think it's important. I think what you'll see is there's also some great data and some great information that you and your team have been able to provide. And just wanted to say thank you from a business community standpoint, how important it is to look at this and be able to be proactive. And as always, I appreciate the city of Fishers for being proactive, looking at data and finding the best solution to support our business community. And I appreciate that. So I'll hand it back over to you, Megan. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Well, what we'd like to do today is to get started kind of outlining how this problem was identified, go through the steps of this policy, and then be able to, again, hear from those who would be involved in the enforcement and the process as well with our public safety team. So join with us is Lindsay Bennett. She is our city attorney. Monica Heltz, she is our public health director. Chief Ed Gebhardt with the chief of police for the city of Fishers, and Chief Steve Arusa, our fire chief for the city. So Lindsay, if you want to kick us off, kind of outlining what the problem was and what led us to this proposed solution, and go through those steps.
Sure. Thank you, Megan. This is Lindsay Bennett, city attorney. Let's see if I can get the PowerPoint up and going here. Okay, so this is a presentation that was put on May 15th for our work session for the City of Fishers Council. And they later held first reading of the ordinance that night. So just procedurally, we had first reading May 15th, and then we'll have second and final reading in June. And then the ordinance doesn't take effect until August 1st. I'm actually going to put Chief Gebhardt on the spot here to talk about the history and how this ordinance came to be, and some of the problems that maybe he's seen with some of the properties within the city, and you know, how just generally the process that we're wanting to follow, and then I can get into more details with the presentation. Chief, do you mind touching on those?
Sure. Historically, we answer calls for service in the city of Fishers. In 2022, we answered to over 52,000 calls collectively to different various calls that come in through the city. And what we notice is a trend that there are certain businesses that we repeatedly go to and answer calls for service. And we started engaging in conversation at a city level of how we can form strong partnership with some of those businesses. And I think this is one of those routes where we can try to eliminate needless response by police by working with and partnering with businesses in and around our city that will help to negate some of those return of officers to those locations when their services could be needed elsewhere in the city for a various amount of reasons. So this is kind of how that story began. I think we've worked into a collective group and reasoning and understanding of where we could be with a public safety nuisance that could help us to establish communication and partnerships among our businesses and our community to go ahead and limit those return of services of officers to each of those businesses within our community. Is that enough for you, Lindsay?
Yeah, thank you. So based on that information, the public safety nuisance ordinance was drafted, and the public safety nuisance team will be Chief Gebhardt, Chief Arusa, and Monica Heltz, the director of the health department. The purpose of the ordinance is just to abate excessive repeat calls to the same commercial properties. Some of the examples of excessive repeat calls could be abandoned vehicles, suspicious people, things like that. So this data was for our work session, but if this chapter were in effect at that time, 10 businesses would have been chronic violators and subject to fines, meaning they had 15 violations in the last 90 days each, and we can go over that in just a minute. This ordinance will apply to commercial properties and industrial properties, so properties like childcare, indoor entertainment, offices, overnight lodging, personal service, restaurant, bars. It does not apply to residential, and it will not apply to medical facilities or other governmental entities or schools. So what counts towards the chronic violator designation will be calls for service where the police department or fire department is dispatched, deployed, or responds to an incident, whether or not any action is taken. Valid complaints, so that would be a documented call that requires some kind of response by our public safety at that business. And then citations, which would be a written notice of violation of an ordinance, federal or state law that would require payment of a fine. So basically, anytime public safety is out there responding at the commercial property, it would count towards the number of violations that would go towards the chronic violator designation. This is probably the easiest way to understand. We've kind of been talking about the 7, 10, 15 framework. So once you get your 7th call, complaint, or citation, you'll be sent a warning notification by the public safety team. Just basically saying, hey, you're getting several calls, complaints. If we get to 10, you're going to need to come in and meet with our public safety team, and we're going to have to talk about how to start abating these calls. At the 10th call, complaint, or citation, you'll get a written notice from the public safety team that they want to meet with the business and they want to talk about a remediation agreement and come up with some common sense approaches to start abating some of these calls and public safety responses to the property. And I'll go over those in just a minute of what that might look like. But to Chief Gebhardt's point earlier, this is a collaboration between the city and the businesses to try to find some common sense approaches to start abating these calls and public safety responses. So once you get to the 15th call, complaint, or citation, you might receive a chronic violator designation. And I say that you might because if you are coming in and meeting with the public safety team, you have a remediation agreement in place and you're working towards meeting that remediation agreement, then you would not be considered a chronic violator, even if you continue to have calls, complaints, or citations. If the business does not come in and meet with the public safety team, does not enter into a remediation agreement, or does not make substantial process or substantially comply with the agreement, then those additional calls, complaints, and citations would result in a chronic violator status. So again, it's 7, 10, 15, and it's a stepped approach, warning notification up to a meeting with the public safety team and entering the remediation agreement. And then the final would be a chronic violator status. And I just kind of went over all of this. So I'm going to go through here. And if you want this PowerPoint, it's on our website under the May 15th work session. And it has all of this information in there. So this is actually taken from the ordinance and the remediation agreement. If you get to 10, it'll be in writing. It'll set forth reasonable remedial measures that have to be initiated within 90 days of executing the agreement. It will include proactive measures that are necessary to abate the violations, and it'll have a term of no more than 6 months and fully executed within 30 days after the meeting. And then the business owner would be responsible for providing reports of progress every month. And, our public safety team would likely check in with the business as well. I think it's important to note that if you have any other citations, written notices, anything that has been issued by the city, whether it's public safety related, if it's code enforcement related, if it's health department related, those are all things that we would want to address during this meeting and the agreement. So the remediation agreement, here's some examples. If you have several calls for abandoned vehicles, your remediation agreement might include things like register vehicles for your customers, address broken down vehicles on the lot, keep a proactive eye on parking lots and identifying unwanted vehicles, work with the public safety team to have them tagged and removed. If you're having several false alarms, your remediation agreement might look like just training all of your employees on an alarm system, making sure that the staff is attentive to the alarm system, and updating and maintaining the alarm system. If you're getting a lot of calls on suspicious people, then you might just issue one card key per customer, post customers only allowed signs throughout the business, and address any solicitation or activity in the lobby that's not business related. So if you come in and you do all of those things and you continue to get additional calls, complaints, or citations, you're in compliance with your agreement, you will not hit that chronic violator status. The only time that this chronic violator status comes into play is if you are not meeting with the team, if you're not working towards the agreement, if you're just not trying to abate some of these issues. And so the chronic violator designation is important because you'll have that designation for 6 months. Any subsequent calls for service, valid complaints, or citations will be fined at $250 per call, complaint, or citation. And then the law department can take additional action to abate the nuisance in accordance with Indiana law, such as asking for an injunction. So I won't go through all of these examples, but again, they're on the PowerPoint. And if you want to go through them on the website, you're welcome to do that. But basically what the examples are getting at is if you work with the city, you're not going to hit the chronic violator status. If the business does not work with the city, then they're going to start getting additional fines for each call, complaint, or citation. And also, once you hit that chronic violator status, again, it's in place for 6 months, and you'll have fees and fines that are assessed with that for each additional call, complaint, or citation. But after 6 months has passed, that property will no longer have the chronic violator status as long as they have paid all of the outstanding fees and fines. We're currently in our public outreach effort. We'll have some additional public outreach following the next city council meeting. And of course, feel free to contact us if you have any additional questions. So that is all I have. It looks like we have one Q&A. It says, does this include instances where a member of our business would call non-emergency due to a theft? We have members call to report thefts for all sorts of items from Evolution basketballs to wallets, phones, etc.
You want me to handle that, Lindsay?
Sure.
I think that probably this is something that's not going to count towards a fine assessment, but it may be something that we partner and talk about together collectively on how the police department or how the board can help to maybe alleviate the business of some thefts. But I don't know that I would hold any, I know I wouldn't hold those types of calls against the business itself.
And Chief, maybe while we're talking about that, how you plan on starting some of this outreach, what businesses can expect to see from our public safety team?
So if you're getting into the area on the count that we would reach out to you, we would request a meeting. We'd like to do that at the business location with the business owner and or manager, and just sit down and have an initial conversation of how can we help with some of these calls for service, and go over everything with them and be transparent and try to come to an understanding of what the business may need in terms of how the city can support and move forward. The goal here is to create partnerships and teams and get the calls for service down, not to hit with fines and not be the heavies about this particular ordinance.
So for anybody there was a question that just came through about, to clarify, when saying not residential, does that mean apartment communities, multifamily as well?
This is Lindsay, and yes, that's correct. Indiana code currently does not allow this type of ordinance to be enforced against apartments or residences.
So Chief and the rest of the team, as we look at rolling this out, what does the timing of all of this look like? And are there any businesses that we're going to reach out to preemptively based off of their data points?
So Lindsay can go over a better timeline, but I can tell you in the timeline, she'll speak about we plan to inform. That's this and other means. We plan to educate. And then we plan to start from anew. As Lindsay talks about getting through the second and third reading of city council, it's not one of those where we're going to accrue the last 6 months. We're going to start, begin, and then start reaching out as things occur and calls for service begin to escalate at businesses. Lindsay, do you have something to add to that?
No, Chief, I think you handled that one. I don't have anything to add.
When is and I'm thinking, when exactly do we expect to have the ordinance passed and in effect and moving?
Yeah, it will, if council decides to approve it, that would be at the June meeting. And then there are some requirements for publication. So we'll do that in June as well. There'll be additional outreach June and July, and August 1st will be the actual date where the calls, complaints, and citations will start counting.
Thank you.
Looks like there's a question that says, you mentioned a valid complaint is anytime a call comes in and is dispatched to a business, but what if it's found the call wasn't valid to begin with, i.e. the noise level wasn't above noise ordinance level? Yes, those do count. Anytime that you have public safety responding to any call, whether it's for a valid complaint or if it's just, somebody picked up, dialed 911 and hung up, and then they come out and there's nothing there, those all count towards the 7, 10, 15 count.
But I think the way that we've written it and our goal with this, just kind of playing that forward with this question, this isn't being put in place to deter anyone from calling the police. I think it's about trying to partner with you to help find solutions if this is like a recurring issue. Is that right?
Right. Yeah, we definitely don't want to, discourage anybody from ever calling if they ever feel like they need public safety at their property. I do see a question here. So if we have a customer refusing to leave, causing a disturbance, we are not to call the police. Will that become an issue? From my perspective, we want to encourage everybody to call if they feel that they need a public safety response. And the intent was definitely not to discourage those types of calls. Chief, do you have anything else that you want to touch on?
No, and remember, it's a culmination of constant calls for service. And remember, myself, Chief Arusa, and Director of Health will meet in person and talk about these things. We can gain an understanding of what's going on in the business with the business. This isn't going to be, we send you a punitive letter via email, and that's that. We plan to address. So if you have situations that you feel don't warrant a part of the conversation, then certainly there'll be a time where we can talk about that together as a team. And that's the intent of this nuisance policy, is to work together and to move forward together collectively, so we're not coming down there for needless calls for service.
Well, I don't see any other questions starting to come in. But again, we will share this information, and Ashley and Lindsay, is this going to be on the website where the existing presentation from the work session is posted?
Yes, this is the same PowerPoint that I used at the work session in May, and it's on the agendas website under City Council.
I was sorry, I should have clarified. I was referring to this webinar.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It'll be on.
Yeah, it will be on the public nuisance website.
Perfect, okay. I see a question that came through. Are there ways hotels and businesses can work together to address trespass issues more effectively to prevent police from having to return to multiple times or having to return multiple times to the same area as a person is trespassing business to business?
Hey, can you give me that one more time, Megan? I
Sure.
think you know what she's asking or he's asking. I just give it to me one more time so I answer the question.
Sure. Are there ways hotels and businesses can work together to address trespass issues more effectively to prevent police from having to return multiple times to the same area for a person who is trespassing?
Yeah, that's a great question and I like it. Yeah, I think you can. I think we can open up a better line of communication, especially in the hotel realm, that you guys can decide at any time not to have someone on your property because it's private. And we can work through that with you. And certainly we can, and once we issue a no trespass on behalf of a business, certainly that's something that gives us a lot more probable cause when we arrive back and come in contact with that person. But to my knowledge, Lindsay, unless you see an issue with it, I think that the business is coming together to communicate different things is an okay thing. Lindsay, thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. I don't see any issue with that from my perspective. I think that would be encouraged.
Great. Well, I don't see any other questions starting to come through. Again, thank you so much to everybody on here. This will be taken for final reading on June 19th. Monday, June 19th is our next city council meeting. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to anyone here. We just shared in the chat that we'll follow up with an email with all of this information. And Jack, thank you so much for being here, showing the chamber's support. Any parting thoughts or questions from your side?
No, I appreciate, as always, I think one of the great things that the city does is include the business community, provide opportunities like this where we can have open dialogue and have conversations and answer questions. And between now and the council meeting, if any of our members or even non-members have questions for us, we're happy to relay those back to the city moving forward. But I just wanted to say thank you to the team here for always being able to communicate with our businesses and provide that opportunity for businesses to give their thoughts. So thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Jack. We really appreciate your partnership and support. Anybody from the City of Fishers team, anything before we jump off? Nope. Great. Well, thanks so much, everybody. We will be in touch soon, and please reach out with any questions.